Hi, I'm happy to be here. As Iona has already told, I'm looking for an ethical point of view in medicines, in pharmaceutical patents, and access to healthcare. So let's watch all the impact. And we have to face some challenges. We are living in challenging times, difficult times. We have political instability, we have poverty, drug trafficking, oil exposure prices, and we have to fight terrorism and have combating strategies for terrorism. We have also refugee crisis and have to make plans for contingency, IP breakdowns, bribery allegations, runaway inflations in countries like Venezuela and Argentina and Egypt. And we have we have default risks, but there is always one constant in our daily lives is that we will always need healthcare and access to medicines. Well, let's have an overview of what's this issue about, how does it is controversial. So we will begin with a concept of pharmaceutical patents that have different provisions than the normal patents, and we will talk about the legal barriers to healthcare access, international and domestic ones. We will talk about the international context of pharmaceutical patents against the drug access, and the two view of pharmaceutical patents with examples and some conclusions. Well, the concept patent and intellectual property is important for the company's assets, and it relates to many other figures, legal figures as arbitrations, ethics, monopolies, licensing, exclusivities, infringement, politics, innovations, research, development, and abuse also in the law, prosecutions and arbitrations. A patent, as you may know, is a set of exclusive rights granted by the government of a country to an individual for a defined duration period. It's in almost all the countries I know, it's about 20 years, in lieu of putting the invention open in public domain. So it can be used by the third parties. That's the main purpose. Typically, a patent is granted for a product or medical device in pharmaceutical patents, or process that should be new, inventive, with an inventive activity. This means that it should be non-obvious inventiveness, and that is capable of being used. Any patent or patent application contains a variety of sections which include different information that validates the novelty and the inventive activity. It has three chapters: the description chapter, the claims chapter, and the resume chapter. There are several legal barriers to healthcare access that also regulate the pharmaceutical patents. There is an international context. The North American Free Trade Agreement between Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And there is the TRIPS, that is the trade-related intellectual property agreement by the World Trade Organization. There is also a trade agreement called ACTA. It's against counterfeiting. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership that was to be signed between 12 countries, but is now pending because of the United States' new president. And there is also a new NAFTA renegotiation this year, because the NAFTA has about 25 years old. It has been signed. There are also domestic legal property, international, but no, legal intellectual property laws. And there we have intellectual property types of laws of patents or trademarks. And we have also regulatory laws that go beyond patent rights, like data exclusivity and patent linkage. The TRIPS is an international agreement, and it has been strongly criticized by the countries, mostly the emerging countries, because it said that it provides unnecessarily strong protection to IP rights and serves to prevent the ill people in the developed countries to have access to affordable essential medications, such as tuberculosis, diabetes. But now also in developed countries, there is also a problem for access to healthcare in drugs for cancer or for hepatitis C. It's a very political and important issue also. So the TRIPS came into effect in January 1st, 1995, and it's a multilateral agreement. And it was, since TRIPS is very linked to the World Trade Organization, nations are unlikely to abandon the World Trade Organization, so they although they dislike this type of agreements, and some critics of patents will prefer they don't exist, but the realistic point of view is that a patent is also a business issue, and this TRIPS is mandatory also for its members. There's another figure that is stated in the NAFTA and the TRIPS that is called patent linkage, and it's like a barrier for generics to enter prior to the expiration of the term of the patent. So it's like it links the regulatory authority to the patent office in each country, and it states that a marketing authorization cannot be approved without the expiration or not infringement of the owner of the patent, who has the rights. So many people are against this linkage, because it says it also is a barrier for the access to medicines, and they may develop the drug or the medicine before the patent is expired. And so they also, the healthcare, the ones that are in favor of the healthcare and against the pharmaceutical patents say that many times the big pharma abuses of this legislation and makes some improvements to the molecules that have been invented, and they add new dosages or they add new formulas. And so the extension of the pharmaceutical patent is additioned for more than 20 years, about 25 or 30 years. This is what is called evergreening. It was caused by a court in India, and since then it's called like this. So in the international context for patents and drugs, we have the TRIPS, the ACTA, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, that it's not implemented still, but it has some very strict enforcement measures for patent infringements, and it has extension terms that are to be added. And well, we are waiting for the NAFTA renegotiation. And well, we have the intellectual property chapter, but we also have the investment chapter, and here is the research and development issues that many owners of pharmaceutical patents argue that they need these revenues to be invested in research and development for new and innovative new medicines. So we have like two versions of the pharmaceutical patents. We have the requirements that patents on all inventions that meet requirements such as new. They don't permit new improvements of the patent. They only permit a new molecule to be invented and no improvements. They argue for a patent term minimum not to be extended. They also enhance for a compulsory license rules that I will explain later. It's a non-option right to be granted by a government, and patent remedies for infringement or third parties like damages, injunctions, and declaratory judgments. And the new figure called data protection that I will explain later also. And there are some flexibilities that most innovators and pharmaceutical patents argue or are in favor with an undefined extension term, expiry term. It's here I mentioned the example of the drug called Gleevec by Novartis. It's a drug for cancer, for leukemia, and it was challenged by the Indian Court of Law, and it was lost by Novartis, stating that it was only an improvement of an old drug, of an old medicine. So Big Pharma was really very angry about this resolution, but the Indian court was very strict about it. They also say there should not be any patent term extension. that the compulsory license should be only permitted, not to be an option. The remedies should be upon discretion, and the oppositions to patent applications may be permitted also. So there's always some two points of view regarding this kind of patents. One that is in favor of the access to drugs and medical devices for healthcare, and the other that is in favor of innovation, research and development, in technology, and strict enforcement rules against patent infringements. Why should we see these 2 points of view? Because they are important for negotiation and interpretation and ethical issues. The people see what they want to see most of the time. They have a so-called confirmation bias that involves paying excessive attention to data which confirms our preferred diagnosis, while ignoring data which refuses it. And we always have controversial issues like politics, science, religion, and we are most of the time based on individual perspective. We have always to look to a balanced opinion. So we have at one extreme, we have patents that are seen as a mere privilege granted by a nation, so that they are inherently subject to limitations to accommodate other societal goals, such as access to medicines. But on the other extreme, patents are viewed as an exceptionally strong property right that should seldom, if ever, be subject to exceptions, because these rights are presumed critical to promoting innovation. Furthermore, we have examples of the restriction patent rights, the compulsory license that are intended to help provide low costs to countries, to country markets. These are, we're talking now of medicines for hepatitis C or cancer and malaria. We also have the patentable subject matter in India 3D that explain that no improvement to the patents are permitted. We have a generic drug versus an innovator drug. Which one is the best? And they are both very likely to be similar because of regulatory laws in every country. And we have rights beyond patents that are called data protection or data exclusivity and the patent linkage. So a compulsory license, we have some confusion regarding on behalf of the TRIPS about the license compulsory of a patent. A compulsory license takes place when a government allows someone else to produce the patent product or process without the consent of the patent owner. So it is one of the flexibilities on patent prosecution included in the TRIPS. So it's been confusion. Some people view it from different points of view regarding their interests, mostly economic. But the TRIPS basically says that each member has the right to grant compulsory license and the freedom to determine the grounds upon which such license were granted. it is also based on the Doha Public Health Declaration from 2011. And it is not only for emerging countries, and it's not only for emergency illness in some countries. It's for all the countries that require a more accessible drug prices. So now let's explain what happened in India. India is famous for this controversial with Novartis, and it restricts the grants of patents for incremental innovations in many drugs unless it provides really significant therapeutic advantages, and it forbids the evergreening figure, and it's like a barrier to a more extensive term of the drug. The Intellectual Property Appellate Board of India resolved against Novartis for the patent on the Glyvic medicine, and because it was not a new molecule, it was just a new form. Since Novartis argued it was absorbed more easily at the stomach of the patient. So we have the TRIPS that is confusing the interpretation. Some say it does has arguments for the general pharma for the big pharma to be mandatory, and some others are criticizing this. So the access to drugs is that patents on all inventions that meet requirements, they say they should be new and innovative. They have a specific patent term. There must be a compulsory licensing rules. There must be remedy discretion and ambiguous data protection. And the big pharma or innovative companies say that new uses or new improvements must be patented. That similar compounds need no improved efficacy, that they argue for a longer patent term. They need a limited compulsory licensing. They need specific remedies. They want to limit challenges to patent applications, and they want mandatory protection of data and beyond rights. Beyond patent rights, they are in favor of a regulatory protection besides the intellectual property laws, and they argue for a data protection or exclusivity that is very controversial issue nowadays of what protection must be provided for a clinical data submitted in connection with obtaining approval to market a new drug. They stated it for a minimum of 5 years, and well, they also are in favor of the patent linkage. So, and the other point of view is that they should minimize price and increase, and don't increase consumer information. So it's we have two controversial issues. Big pharma is also a good business, so they are very focused on economics. They want international trade and foreign investment, but on the other side there are the health issues. They are have very they have inaccessible prices, especially to patented drugs, and they have new medicines with new research and development issues, but the prices are inaccessible. So our conclusion, now that we are in an ethical session, is that high prices on drugs simply cannot be legitimate grounds for withholding life-saving treatment from people. Access to medicine is a fundamental human right. After all, the existence of a life-saving or sustaining drug is essentially of no utility if it is priced beyond reach. And this applies to emerging markets and to rich countries.
Thank you very much. I think we are quite short in time, but maybe if there is, and lunch is coming, and it's always a delicate question. If there are any brief questions, I think we are able to take for both presentations.
Hi, at risk of coming across very heartless, a question about the pharmaceutical thing. Obviously, the pricing of the second drug isn't the question, it's the pricing of making the first drug. So if they can't price the overall medicine to fund their R&D, so you're therefore reducing the price and so it's easily accessible, are you not then stopping the ability to develop the drugs in the first place? So how would you kind of suggest in this global world when if it's low priced in emerging markets through the internet they could then be kind of bought and transferred into more developed markets where they could otherwise sell them at a higher price? How would you manage that whole global infrastructure of the pricing for drugs to ensure pharmaceuticals have the ability to continue development?
Yes, it's a very good question. The suggestion has been made to Big Pharma. They have a lot of research and development for new drugs, but it's not always justified. Many times the revenue of the high prices is used for marketing, not for research and development. And there are studies that talk about that. And maybe it's more as Big Pharma looks it more as a business market and not as a healthcare issue. So there are a lot of ONGs that are providing some really good solutions to these problems by saying, well, this drug is new, but it should be accessible to these countries that can't afford their governments to buy it in these prices, or maybe the license compulsory patents that all the governments may have the right to use it on behalf of the TRIPS.
I would like to hear your comment on the practice of big pharmaceutical firms today to bring doctors from different countries to large conventions and conferences. And this is fairly so often.
Yes.
And as you know, if you go and you are funded by these pharmaceutical firms, you tend to promote their products despite its adverse effect to the public. So is there an ethical consideration in the manner by which they feed the doctors? And meaning they go out to conventions, and that's very common. I have so many doctor friends. They're practically outside of the country, maybe 8 times a year. Every time you call them, I'm in Europe. I'm attending a convention. So
yes,
just want to hear the ethical side of it.
Yes, all the expenses are paid for the doctors, and the real reason is they should prescribe their medicines of the convention that organizes, of the company that organizes the convention. So doctors also have an unethical, an unethical conduct with the big pharma.
So to that extent, can we say that the big pharmaceutical firms should look at this practice?
Yes, and it's on the compliance and compliance codes. They are restricting these conducts each time more and more because they have been affected by some legal problems in compliance, and it has affected their stocks. They have been gone down for corruption with
really?
the doctors, with
And
the medical.
In connection with that, I would want Virginia can answer this also. I'm dealing with a pharmaceutical firm. I cannot disclose. It's a big pharmaceutical firm, and they're very strict when it comes to compliance. I had to pass through a test. There's an online compliance. You will have to pass. If you don't, you have to repeat the process all over. I think you're aware of that. And then they're so strict in terms of whether facilitation, meeting, dining, and all of this. Now, but of course, do they not understand about culture also? Right? That's cultural. Like maybe in other countries, eating and dining is just okay. And I think this is directly connected because we're lawyers. The next, I think, matter that we have to look into is you're looking that pharmaceutical firms are looking on compliance. Then there's culture. How about facilitation? In our law firm, we don't promote that. But of course, the reality is the big pharmaceutical firms would want to win cases. They want to win cases. If the regional head reports, we're losing cases in this country, they'll bug you. What's happening to this country? Why are we losing? Now, they're expecting you to win. How do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, it's not an easy answer because I was discussing about, well, I come from a different sector, but I was having a very interesting discussion with a friend of mine about the fact that a lot of doctors go in wonderful trips in Vegas or beautiful places, and they're always in beautiful places, the convention, I agree. I was having this discussion with a friend of mine because she works in the pharmaceutical industries, and we were sharing our opinions. She basically was a compliance director for big pharmaceutical companies, and she said no to a lot of this convention. At the same time, I was saying no to a lot of conventions in a total different industry because I was working in the telecommunication business. But I was saying no for similar reasons. And we both had our issues with the head of sales calling us, saying, why you're telling me no? And we were, thinking that actually there were many common grounds, even if we were working for different sectors. Now, in my view, in order to see if it's really for the convention and the topic or if it's more for something else, we should start implementing new rules and say doctors pay their own cost, and probably we would find a dramatically lowering number of conventions. Same for the industry I was working for. So sometimes I know I'm probably too strict on certain things, but if I have the suspicion that there is actually something else, and a lot of time the suspicion was confirmed, I would say no. And when I was working for a company, they used to come to me before for the approval, at least in a lot of cases. Now, I can tell you that more companies are getting, especially in the pharmaceutical sector, more aware of this, and they're now putting boundaries that are like, for example, pre-approval in certain cases. And in my view, this is helping, but what's also helping really should be it's like the gift before. If we all apply the same rule, no gift, there will be nobody saying, oh, why you don't give me gift anymore? Really? Lower gift? It should be just normal, right? If instead we are just like, one company applies that rule, the other big nine don't apply that. The big nine are like, okay, I'll go there, it's better, I'm sorry, I like your product, but not so much. So I think we should talk more about this, but in real terms, not in a way, let's see how we can avoid being caught and find a sneaky way. But really, let's sit and see how we can do business rightly, correctly, and stop, playing with all these little things, first of all. So discussion and support, I'll close just by, and then we can also discuss at lunch, but I'll close just by saying that really big companies in different sectors should really start talking seriously about these topics, not for finding sneaky ways of overcoming the issues. That's my personal opinion. And for your question, do they don't know cultural difference? In some cases, the answer is no, they don't know. And in some others, yes, they do know, but they are in breach of the law. So, so there are moments in which what is called is a cultural thing. It's not supposed to happen anyway. So,
Thank you very much. Well, actually, can we take one more question? Okay, last question. Last question.
And it's actually more of a comment than a question, but in my experience, sometimes companies can do themselves a disservice if they create rules that are so strict that it actually undermines compliance in the first instance. Because, for example, if a company implements a rule that says you can't take customers to lunch, and you know going in that first, is there a litigation risk? Probably not. Is there a regulatory risk? Probably not. And are your employees actually going to adhere to that rule? Probably not. And if you are already developing rules that you know at the back of your mind are rules that most likely aren't going to be followed, that creates a very slippery slope for your organization, because then it puts at risk your other governing rules, policies, procedures. And if employees have in the back of their mind, okay, we've got this rule that we don't have to comply with, then they can take that to other rules that may actually have serious implications for your organization. So you have to be careful at a company in setting your rules, and you don't want to get stricter than you really need to when evaluating that litigation and regulatory risk from my experience.